Hi, my name is Daniella, and you are listening to the Audacious Path podcast, the one and only podcast that is specifically aimed at adventure creators like you and me. Every 2 weeks, I interview other creators in the adventure sphere and I ask them about how they started, grew, and monetized their adventure creator business. I'm super excited about this episode where I talk to Becky Pearson Davidson, a product growth strategist who helps other entrepreneurs and creators launch and grow community-driven products. In this episode specifically, we're talking about Patreon, and she walks me through how to do a customer journey map in order to understand your audience better so that you can get more patrons and retain them longer. I'm telling you, this episode is gold. Becky is an absolute genius. And I would absolutely love to hear what you think of this episode. As you listen along, you can tag me or send me a DM at the Audacious Path and enjoy the episode. To start out with, tell me about yourself. What are your expertise? What do you do? And what potentially can you teach us here?
I am a community-driven product strategist, and my background and roots is really in the tech industry. And so I was helping build custom software for really large enterprise companies, but also a ton of early stage startups too, and especially in the healthcare space. And so I found my way to the creator industry by following people like Jay, who we both know, and also Boss Babe, the founders of Boss Babe. And I ended up joining a few different memberships and kind of fell in love with just like education memberships because I'm a total nerd. And so when Boss Babe posted that they were hiring for a product role, I was like, oh, okay. This is my way in the door. So that's kind of where things shifted, and I started doing. It really made me realize how much product strategy that we do in the tech industry could help creators and early stage entrepreneurs. And so I left Boss Babe a few months ago, started my own company where I'm doing product strategy consulting, and I focus a lot on community journey mapping, because if we think about community members and the people that we're serving, they're on some kind of transformational journey that we're helping them with. That journey is an emotional roller coaster. And so the more we understand that roller coaster, the more we can serve them at different moments and also build our businesses, because you can serve them with both free and also paid products that help you grow your revenue, right? And serve your customers longer. So if I was going to use like tech jargon, I would say we could increase our customer lifetime value, but instead I'll say we can serve our community members and also make money.
I found that within the adventure sphere that a lot of people are not thinking about their videos as a product. And there's this shift that I'm trying to make in my audience and the people that I serve, which is like your videos are a product. And if you're going to be asking for something like Patreon or affiliate marketing or whatever it is, that's a product that you're going to be selling. Do you also have to make that shift in your customers?
I don't know. I think really if you approach the business like it's service, like yes, treat it like a product, but that also means paying attention to, is this video serving the people that are watching it? And is it what they need? And so I think there's a shift in that way where if you treat it like a product, that means what that means is you're tracking the performance. And by performance, I mean not just like how many views did this get, but what kind of engagement did it have, and also how does it convert to sales or convert to something that goes beyond the video. But is it serving the community member, audience member that's watching it, right? Because like if it's actually solving a problem for them, then that is the opportunity that a product is. A product is just something that helps somebody solve a problem.
And I think it's really hard to be in the creator sphere where you're putting out work that is kind of like your heart and soul. It's your personality, and you're having to think about that business side of it still, and it kind of takes away, or it can take away a little bit of the love behind it, or like the feeling, if that makes sense, because you're putting so much of yourself out there.
Yeah, you don't want to like it's a really interesting shift to go from like tracking performance of some kind of like software platform to tracking the performance of my videos or something, right? Like it does feel like um analyzing your self-worth in a way. But this reminds me a lot of something. So my roots are in design, and it reminds me a lot of, in the design world, we say kill your darlings, meaning don't get so attached to your work. Like you can produce creative work and also not be tied to it. Like, you are not your work, you just make work. And so I think it's a hard thing to do. And when I teach design students, this is like the number one struggle. They come up with the first idea and then they're like, this is my baby, I love it, and they carry it the whole time. And I'm like, let your baby go. It's time to like move on, iterate, because it's not your baby. it, and so that emotional detachment to the work is, I think, the hardest struggle of being a creative.
Yes. Oh, yes, that resonates a little too hard. I want to turn and focus towards like the revenue streams that that people within my sphere typically focus or they go towards. And it's things like Patreon or affiliate links or brand sponsorships and ad revenue. Just a little background for everyone listening. Becky and I had done this customer journey map that really resonated with me, which is why I brought her onto the podcast. And I think that there is room to think about how our videos get people to this, the end game, which is, selling those things, selling probably Patreon. I would say we could focus on the most because that's where people get the majority of their revenue from. How can we think about that emotional journey that people go on? You said like focus on the audience, detach yourself, but there's more to it than that. There's more within that journey, if that makes sense.
Well, you have to have conversations with the people that are watching your videos, whether that's like in the comments or the community section or whatever, but understanding what's resonating about your videos and what do they want more of and what are their challenges and problems right now. I don't know if it's possible in your world. You can tell me if you can do like one-to-one conversations, but that is always the ideal scenario. But as much information gathering as you can do on who's watching your videos, what do they care about? What are their challenges? What's going on in their lives? Because when you say like, hey, this Patreon or this product or service is going to do XYZ, you want XYZ to be like resonate really well with the people that are watching. Like, oh, this is exactly what I need. And the way to do that is to understand who they are and what they need.
Yeah, I did some of those conversations. They were super helpful. With a product, for example, I'm doing my course that I'm creating. I'm solving a specific problem where, there's creators that need help within the space to grow their channel. But with a video, it's a bit more vague than that. It might be that you are representing sailing life, but your personality is what's selling people. Is there a way to conceptualize the fact that like you're selling your personality on that journey? I guess what I'm thinking, and it's a bit being processed out loud, to be honest, is that if the personality is what's selling, then it's community that's the solution. People are looking for the community, they're looking for the connection, and that's what you're providing to people. Is that kind of on par, or like, am I going the right direction?
Yeah, I love this topic because it's like if you build your business with the mindset that you're building community, you're not like building necessarily a way to just make a ton of money. You're building community with the people that you're serving. Then your mindset shifts and the way you make your work shifts because it's not just about you. So it's funny because like yes, you're the personality that's out front. However, it's not about you. It's about the people that are coming together to watch you and learn from you and facilitating those conversations. So you kind of go from like performer to facilitator. I think when it comes into it, I think about like myself, for example, if I'm talking to the people that are following me and I'm telling them about the behind the scenes of my business, like I connect with a lot of people on that. But at the end of the day, it's really about me understanding what they need and then coming up with a product that solves that problem and then bringing them together so that they can learn from one another. And I think we're going to see a big shift because there's a lot of people in the creator world developing memberships that are focused a lot around them. Okay, so like in some creator memberships where it's more performance based, where the creator you're maybe subscribing to is coming and doing a performance, and then it's more like creator and audience versus facilitating connection. So I think the more we can lean into facilitating connection, the less it is about performance. And so I think that's like the big shift that we'll see with memberships.
What do you do before you get them into your membership? How do you make sure that they know that's something that you can offer? Like when you're on your community page and you're not like, it's a little bit more disconnected then, or in your case, it would be like on social media. Like how do you get people to that space where you're the facilitator before the community?
People don't buy community usually, but they stay for community. So you have to sell something else. You have to sell solving a problem. But then when you bring them there, then the facilitation work you're doing is what fosters community. And I think if I was going to give like a really specific example to do this like pre-purchase, you might encourage people to comment on a video about, hey, what's a struggle you're having with X? And then people will interact with each other if they relate to one another. But you know, that's just one example of how you could do it.
Okay, so we have this journey. People are watching their videos. They start engaging within the comment section, and you ask this question and you connect them. What's like, how do I'm still, there's something missing. There's like a link that I'm missing to get them to the patron part of it.
How do you do it today?
Typically what happens where I've seen like really good patron is it's someone who is blown up real fast and people like want to be part of that exclusivity, if that makes sense, or it seems to be that. But what I think is probably the most effective way that I'm trying to encourage for my people is offering, like getting your channel centered around an idea. And then like, for example, let's just say I'm really, really, really good at cooking, and I get everyone centered around this idea of cooking, and I cook on a boat and I show them how to do it in these like really tight atmosphere. And then I would offer in my Patreon, like if you go in there, we can have more discussions about cooking. Maybe I'll even offer you my like PDF cookbook or something like that. And so it would be more like product oriented, if that makes sense. And I'm trying to do that. I'm starting to do that with this podcast and everything I'm doing, where it's like you'll get more support if you go into Patreon. I will look at your videos more and I will provide you support on how to grow your channel, if that makes sense. Is that kind of a good way to do it?
Early in the journey, you definitely always want to be talking about what you do behind the scenes. Like I think just putting that out there, like in like, oh, this weekend I'm going sailing with the people that are my patron, because the people watching that are like, oh my gosh, I can go sailing with Daniella. Like, how do I do that? Right? Like, I want to be a part of that. So I think exclusivity is a thing, and showing that. I also think sharing like vulnerability. Early in the journey too, like what you're personally struggling with, because that will get people talking about and sharing their struggles, which can help you understand like what problems do they need solved. Because once you understand what problems they need solved, that's the kind of stuff you can offer in your Patreon, right? And talk about it. So you might say, okay, so this is hard because I don't know like sailing terminology. But you used an example with me of like cooking on the boat. Like, how do I cook on the boat? That's a really good example of like, if you're talking about that all the time, then maybe it's like recipes that can be a book of recipes or things that you put together inside the membership that they would always get access to. And so it's really about unlocking more content, but it doesn't just have to be more videos. It can be things like PDFs or even other creators' content. Maybe you have some sort of collaboration.
And how, when you think about like the emotional journey that people are on, because that was like the activity, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, how would you think about this emotional journey towards patron? Like, if we're trying to catch people when they're low, right, and we're trying to get them towards that community, what would be like, off the top of my head, I'm thinking like maybe like that lack of community is a low point. Is that how you think about it?
So the idea behind the journey map is understanding the low emotional moments. But the low emotional moments aren't necessarily they're the thing that tell you what to build. So they're the thing that help you understand what the offer is. And then when they have that low moment, you say, hey, this is here for you. Because when they hit that, they realize that that product is available and that they can have it. But and the product can be something that's within the patron, but it's like that is what tells you what to build. So instead of like saying, okay, I'm going to start a Patreon and it's going to have these are the things I'm going to do. Instead of just making that up, this journey map tells you exactly what to put in there, because what they need are the things that they say their challenges are. And so you go solve that in your Patreon, and then you're always talking about it. And that helps people understand when they hit those moments, like, oh, that like last week I was making recipes that I told my patron about. And they're like, oh, I need recipes. And so they like realize like that's how they join, right? Like those, when they hit those moments, that's when they know to join. But the only reason that you have those solutions or those products in your patron is because you understood their journey.
That resonated with me, and it makes me think that something else that people could do is, rather than only having it in a patron, and I think patron will be what most people will continue to do, unfortunately. I think you're right that you need to think like broader, like, is that actually solving the problem? But it also seems to me that the videos can solve those problems as well, right? Like, let's say for me, a lot of my audience, I have two channels. So I have this podcast channel, which is helping adventure creators. And then I have a vlogging channel where I do very crazy things. And I go on these random adventures alone. And one of the comments that I keep getting from people is that, like, holy crap, like you're going out like to this like very dangerous part of New Zealand and you're solo camping in the middle of winter and it's like raining on you. Like, how do you get the oomph to do that? Like, where does that come from? Why do you do those things? And that makes me think that that's a problem, right? Like, if people are, they're wanting to know, how do I get like the spirit to do those things, then I could address that with some kind of video resource or something else. Is that kind of on the right lines?
Yeah, exactly. And you could get them on your email list. Like that is the way to grow a creator business, is grow an email list, create some sort of resource. So let's say that's like really early in your journey because people aren't even jumping yet, right? Like they're not even going to do these things because they're like, whoa, that's crazy. Like I wish I had the confidence to do that. And so, or the drive, what'd you call it? Oomph, the oomph. Yeah, the spirit to do that. It's totally overwhelming to them. And so you say, hey, like here's my 5-step guide on how to get the confidence, or here's my ebook on how to get the confidence. And maybe that thing is free, because you can make products that are free, but a product solves a problem and it serves your community member. So they go get that free thing, and now they're on your email list, and you can have a sequence that encourages them to join the patron or whatever other product you have that's actually paid.
And it makes me think that, rather than just having some kind of general like adventure newsletter, which could cover a whole range of topics, it would be very important to make sure that newsletter is quite focused on solving the problem or the emotional journey that I've identified. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, like the more you understand who's subscribing, the more you're going to have a um the more you can understand who's subscribing, the more you can make your products really specific so that it solves their real problems and it's not just kind of like shooting in the dark. That's the real difference between understanding your community journey and understanding who's subscribing and who is watching and commenting and all of that. It's really about understanding what their problems are versus like just making up a product because we want to. And as creators, we're often like, oh, it would be really cool if there was a course about X. I could make a course about X. And instead, it's like you should base a course off of the questions you're getting and understanding what the problems are that need to be solved instead of, yeah, just making something to make something, which is what I see all the time.
And that's, again, going back to like the Avenger sphere, like one of the biggest issues that I face within this sphere is that people come in, they're like, oh, like there's all these YouTubers that are super successful. They've gone and made all these videos about their life, and then they've gone patron and they've been able to support the whole journey. And YouTube's way too saturated for that anymore. You can't, what I call a pure vlogger or vlogger formula. Like, you have to be beautiful. You have to have a nice boat in the middle of this really great location with a fantastic story, some major life event. And only probably like less than 1% of creators can get away with just showing who they are, with being completely emotionally attached to their videos. The rest of us are going to have to detach a bit, like what you said, and we're going to have to look at our customers, figure out what problem that we specifically can solve, and then guide them towards a solution that we're going to create that's going to solve their problem. We can't just be vloggers making videos. That's not possible anymore.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's not possible maybe in the context of like making a lot of money through a business or being able to support oneself. But I think again, that's why it's like this is so hard, is because when you are creative and inspired to make something or do something, you want to be able to do that. And if you pull away from that too much, you burn out. And so there's a balance that has to be struck between serving your community and letting your business shift to follow what they need, and also doing the things that you love doing. And we see this all the time, right? Like creators are always talking about this, where it's like based on my performance of all of these things, I need to talk more about this, but like they want me to zig and I wanted to zag.
Oh, I'm kind of facing that right now, to be honest. I know what I need to do and I'm really struggling. So yeah, I feel that.
And I think it's about finding a balance, right? Like you can do things for you in your business, and also like every third or fourth video might be something that's more targeted to what your community needs.
I just want to pause this interview real quick because with the information that Becky gave me in a template that she had for a customer journey map, I was able to take the information I have from having my own vlog and YouTube channel and make a version that specifically applies to adventure YouTubers. So if you go down to the description or the first comment on this podcast, you can see a link to the resource and enjoy the rest of the episode. How would you think about, or what questions would you ask to narrow in to the problem that your people might have? You said have one-on-one conversations. What would you be doing to dig? And let's think about this through like the adventure lens. So I know that my audience on my vlog, they're people who want to go out and do these crazy adventures and have that freedom. And I'm specifically targeting or thinking about solo females.
There's two things that are really important. One is that you have to ask open-ended questions. When you ask closed questions like yes or no type questions, it gets really, you don't get much out of that. You're leading the witness, you're closing them off, and you're like, okay, well, the answer is yes, but that didn't really help me get anywhere. So we want to make questions really open. So using the first word should be like what or how, so that it's really open. And then the second thing is stories are really powerful. So asking people, tell me about the last time you were planned an adventure. Tell me about the last time you wanted to go on a trip and decided you weren't going to go. And so then they tell you, and then at that point you can get into why. So the third part of this is like, there's this framework from Six Sigma. It's called the 5 whys. So when you get 5 layers deep saying why, then you get to the root cause or the root pain of whatever's really happening. And so, yeah, that's the power in like having one-to-one conversations. Because if you're just having, messages back and forth, and that could work, but having a conversation, you can get that deeper layer. A survey is not going to give you that because you can't follow up with lots of why questions as easy. So yeah, those one-to-one conversations are super powerful to get the stories. And then from there, you want to look at what the themes are. So if you talk to 5 women about like the last time they tried to plan a trip, and you might see like there's a really specific theme in like I don't know, maybe they're afraid to camp alone because of something, right? And so then you can dig into, okay, well, how do I give them the tools? Like these are the 10 things I do to feel safe sleeping alone on these adventures.
So I understand the problems. I've talked to my customers. What would you do next? What would I want to do next with those problems?
So this is the fun part. It's like idea jam, because you definitely don't want to go with the first thing you come up with. Like I just threw that out there. Like here are the 10 things that you could that you can do to feel safe sleeping at night. Like okay, that's one idea. Maybe it's a PDF. But what are like 10 other ways you could solve that problem? Like I don't feel safe as a woman alone sleeping at night on an adventure. There's probably 100 million ways to solve that. How, and it might be a physical product. It might be like maybe there's some sort of alarm thing that you could develop that goes off when something comes near you. I don't know. Yeah. So it could be just like letting yourself be like super creative and open to what this could be, because we close ourselves off. I mean, even just now I'm like, oh, a PDF's the answer. And it's like, no, it's not. Probably not. Like there's probably a better way to do it. And so giving yourself play space. And I like to do this with like sticky notes and get away from my computer and either use my whiteboard or whatever, where it's like, okay, this is the problem I'm solving and defining that. So, and I can give you a template for like a problem statement that we could put in the show notes or something. But like, um, understanding like who is the customer, what do they need, and why do they need it is basically the framework. And so you have that, you write that really big. And so that's like the thing you're focused on. And then it's like, here are as many ways as possible that you can think of to solve that problem. And then you want to refine this. And this is where like product strategy really comes in with like understanding your market, understanding which product is going to perform the best. And so you want to evaluate it a few different ways. So the first way and the most important thing is like, what is the most customer value? Because if you don't have customer value, nobody's going to buy it. Nobody's going to care.
This is value for them, right? Like not value for you. Okay. So like what would solve their problem the most? Gotcha.
Yeah. If I say like my problem is that I'm afraid to sleep alone while traveling or adventuring, then there's this alarm thing that goes off, right? That was our like physical product idea. That might work, but at that point something's already bad. So like maybe that's not the greatest answer. So maybe the more valuable thing is understanding what locations are safe to sleep at, right? This is hilarious because I'm also like your target market in this way where I'd be like, no way am I doing that. So anyway, so you have the list of all the ideas and you basically want to say which ones are the most value to the person that I'm serving. Then that's customer value. Then you want to look at business value. Which one is going to make you money and work really well in your business model? Because that matters too. Having worked in like corporate and also with startups, you can't always just follow your heart. You can't always be like, oh, this is really going to help a customer, because at the end of the day, you have to pay the bills too. And so which one is going to be a smart business decision? And maybe that means it's not like the $5 thing or the physical product that's going to have low margin. Maybe it's a partnership with some kind of camping locations company that's really going to help you, right? Like that the things you want to look at is what helps me in the long term, in the long game of my business, really grow my revenue.
I love that. I love that because just pause real quick because that brings in things like sponsorships and affiliate marketing where it's like you're not just picking a random brand, you're thinking about the problem that they might have.
Yeah, and then partnerships are huge, right? Like that you don't always have to. So this whole thing, customer journey mapping, people get really stuck on like, well, I don't just want to build 10 products. And it's like, that's not what I'm telling you to do. Because sometimes you need to have a free thing that's going to help them get to the paid thing eventually. Sometimes there's an opportunity to say, hey, in order for you to get here for me, like my friend over here can really solve that problem. And so partnerships and affiliates should be a good way to help you grow on the business side. So customer value, business value. And then the third thing is level of effort. Like how hard is this thing going to be to make? So coming back to our example, this physical alarm product is going to be hard to develop, like to prototype, to get it manufactured. The margins are going to be low. Like that one's out, right? Like we're crossing that off. It's not the best solution. But this maps guide, maybe it's a maps guide with a partnership with a camping company, like, or camping locations, like that could be not that hard to develop, right? At least in a certain region. And so you could start and so this is the next thing where it's like, well, that could be hard to develop for globally, but maybe within a small region, you could pilot this idea. And that's where you go into like, okay, this is the idea I've selected. Now I'm going to test it.
Okay, so we've focused on one specific part of the journey, which is someone who is afraid to go camping alone, a woman that's afraid of solo camping. How would you think about that in terms of like, okay, so now you've given me this resource, I've gone out, I've braved it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can do this. I can totally do this. But my adventuring needs don't just go away, right? Like I'm going to keep leveling up. So how do you think about, when so like if I'm coming into YouTube, I'm creating this channel, how do I want to think about that? I've found this one problem, but what I want to do is think about like an end game, right?
I don't know. I don't think you think in the sense of an end goal, actually. Unless like end goal would be transformation, like B, right? So it's like you're taking them from, I have no idea how to be an adventurer, solo female adventurer, to I feel really confident and now like bring my friends along and I'm like, hey, like go check this out. This is amazing. This is my life now, right? Like they're full confident. They know what they're doing. That's like that's like, I guess, the end game, like whatever their transformation is. But as far as like products go, your customer journey should be as, as long as it takes to go from point A to point B. And I imagine that that's a pretty long journey, especially when we're serving some kind of transformation. And I'm sure even once you get to a certain point where you're like hitting that one threshold, there's probably something next that comes along, like a bigger adventure. Maybe you get a bigger boat. I don't know. Like there's some new chapter that you turn a page on. So I think in order to prioritize which problems do you solve first, I think that's kind of like the root of what you're asking. That is like the age-old question. But you want to think about what's going to block them from getting to, like, what are the biggest pain points and the biggest blockers? Like if somebody is afraid to camp alone, they're probably never going to go. Like that is probably an important thing to solve as fast as possible so that they even make it to the next step.
How do you decide which stage of the journey to focus on in terms of like the customer? Like if they're never going to go, right? Like let's say that, yeah, I make this resource for you that you decide to go camping alone and then suddenly you've advanced in the journey, but there's still like person A back there that still hasn't like been able to level up. Like which one do you focus on?
Well, where are most of your people at?
Gotcha. Okay. So you're trying to figure out where's the biggest audience that you can target.
And that's where you develop personas, which is a whole nother thing. But it's like you're probably going to have a few different kind of groups of people, and which group is your primary. You have to decide who is the primary person you're serving.
So should your business evolve as you evolve then? Because like theoretically, especially with YouTube, like you're taking people on a journey with you and eventually they're going to be leveled up so much, right?
Yeah, I love this question, because the companies that do not innovate or do not keep developing, or like, oh, I put out this product and it crushed it. It's amazing. It's an amazing product. If they don't keep going, that's when they become irrelevant, because other people are still innovating in that category, or come in and they're like, hey, this didn't solve my problem, and so now I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to solve this problem for other people. And so that's where innovation comes from. So yeah, it's really important to keep doing it. This is not like do it once, set and forget. This is like never ending work.
It almost makes me think that like something like Patreon, like a lot of people will say like, when do you start a Patreon? Like that's a conversation that often happens within the adventure sphere. And hearing what you're saying and like thinking it through, it almost seems like whenever Patreon is solving the problem, and that's it. Never before then. And then you need to figure out what problem are you specifically going to solve with that, and that's it. Which makes it, I think, difficult in the adventure sphere because a lot of people want that to eventually be how they make their money, but that might not actually be the best idea.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that's true. However, you can also shift what you do in the patron, right? Like the content in there can evolve with the people and what they need. And so, I think this is just inherent in membership products. Like we met in a membership together, right? And so that membership is going to evolve as the members evolve. And so if everybody in there is leveling up and leveling up, that's going to continue to, like, that experience needs to shift and change based on where people are at.
That almost makes it a little bit difficult actually, because I'm just thinking like when I first joined the lab, which is how Becky and I met, I was so overwhelmed. Like I just feel so incompetent. So not as much anymore, but I had like serious imposter syndrome. And I took like 2 days, dealt with the anxiety and came back and I sent Jay a message and I was like, hey, like just want to let you know, like I was super overwhelmed by this. I think that's a good thing because it makes me realize that I'm around the people that are going to help me level up. But it was a little bit intimidating. And it makes me think like, how can you make sure you continue to capture those people? Or is that just not possible and that's just something that you have to face?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's up to up to Jay how he like decides to develop things, but if I were him, I'd probably look at something that comes earlier. And he does have the starter membership now that's like just kind of the course content. So I think, he's working on that and developing things that are further earlier in the journey, because that membership does make sense to be further along in his customer journey because it is capped and small and expensive, right? And so it's like that makes sense to be further along. So I think, not that I'm trying to say that people should have more than one membership, but memberships can also serve different stages, or there can be different tiers that serve different stages.
Or different things within that membership as well, maybe, right? Because it's good to be surrounded by people who are like a leveled up or making more money or progress longer, because it does help me as an individual, level up myself. So, what kind of challenges do you see creators that you work with face when they're trying to make those conversions towards, people, customers who have problems to the solution that they're providing?
I think it's what I touched on before, that people just want to make what they want to make. And that's one, and the second one is like we jump so fast to like conclusion of here's the thing I'm going to make versus taking that time to do the ideation I talked about. Like you have to come up with lots of ideas and then narrow it based on these factors like customer value, business value, how hard is it going to be to create? Because a lot of times we just jump to like, oh, I'm going to make a course, or oh, I'm going to make a membership, or oh, I'm going to like find a bunch of affiliates. But what actually could be the solution, and can it be something really unique and different? Like we don't just have to use the same templates everyone else is using. So I think that is a real opportunity. And then I just want to say, like, after you mentioned like what about the newbies in that scenario, I really think that people get stuck on trying to serve everyone too. Like you're gonna have, in the people you serve in your community that are subscribed to you, you're going to have people that there's going to be a group of people that is like the majority. It's like most people are in this zone, and you have to focus on that. You have to focus on that primary group, even though there's going to be people that are in different categories. And that sucks because you feel like you're leaving people behind, but you can't serve everybody. Like the product won't be good, right? Like you have to serve a specific persona group or primary market.
How do you know if you've niched down enough?
I'm figuring that out myself. I think if you've niched down enough, if like things are catching on. Like, is the product performing well? Are you getting good feedback? And that's another thing. You can't just develop a product and then be like, okay, it's developed, like, and then just focus on marketing it. You have to focus on, is it good enough? And how can I make it better? So that's another thing I always see is like products get made, launched, and then never revisited. This comes back to the innovation thing. Is it good enough? How's it working? And so really creating systems in the product that help you get feedback on what's good about it and what needs to be better.
And I think it's interesting, like you've mentioned that you see a lot of people who will create a course and then they're trying to sell it, and that's actually not the solution. What would be your advice to someone who has done that, or they've created a patron and then they realize that like maybe, or as they're listening to this, they're like, well, maybe this isn't the solution that everybody needs, and they've created all this course, it's this big thing. Like what do you do then?
I mean, you just have to pivot. You have to learn and pivot and kill your darlings. So it doesn't mean like you scrap the product, you stop selling it. It just means the people that are with you that used it, that maybe they went through the course, or maybe they are members of the patron, like understanding them and asking them, hey, what could be better about this? Like I want to make some shifts and changes, and bringing them along for the ride, because that's what a community driven product is. It's something that is built with the community, in the sense that they're contributing ideas, they're contributing feedback, and helping you drive that strategy forward. So I'm not saying like scrap a course, but I am saying like understand what's great about it and what could be better, and then update it.
How do you make sure that it's all, I guess maybe this would happen naturally, but how do you make sure it all aligns? Like let's just say like I have, these videos that have a couple thousand views, and then I have this Patreon community that's got like, maybe 15 people in it. Is it do you just kind of assume that those two audiences align? Because what if the people within the patron are saying like, let's go this direction, but your audience is saying, let's go a different direction?
It's important that they're aligned, because the people that are in the larger market, they're the ones that are potentially going to purchase into the paid product. And so I would actually, I don't know, this might be a contrarian view, but you want to focus on the larger group, understand their pain points, and then continue to evolve the product to answer for that, because those are the people that are going to buy into it. With that said, maybe those 15 people need something else and you develop a different thing. So I don't know. They could just be further along in the journey, and that's like, that takes digging in to figure out. It's not like a one size fits all answer. But you're not gonna, if you have a huge audience and the majority of them are at a certain stage or have a certain problem, like, you have to create a product that answers for that, at least earlier in that journey, because that gets them in the path to paid. And then maybe there's something further along, but that's just further along in the customer journey.
So let's imagine that like I've created like a whole heap of products. I realize I've got this people that want to go, solo camping, whatever, and I've got this, opt into a newsletter, and then eventually they join the patron and I'm supporting them, stuff like that. Once I've created everything and I understand it is me, or it's solving a specific problem, how do I keep that going? How do I sustain that? How do I keep that retention up? What are the activities that I should be doing to like ensure that like it doesn't all just disappear?
I mean, it really comes back to the feedback loops and looking at the data and indicators of what's working and what's not. It's so funny. There's like a million product frameworks and stuff to like apply, but that's all it really comes down to. Like, what's working about this and what's not working about this, and then making changes. And just always evolving the work so that it gets better and better, and you're improving it over time, and maybe adding more things or removing stuff too. And so um yeah, it's really about the metrics. So for example, let's go through an example. You have a newsletter is maybe part of your journey, but let's say the open rate is pretty low, like 25% open rate. We can do better than that. So okay, what's working with this newsletter and what's not? Reaching out to the newsletter subscribers and saying, hey, I'm going to be making changes and shifts here. Would love to know what you love about this and what could be better. And doing some kind of re-engagement campaign too. So you're maybe sending more emails than your newsletter, and it's more specific on trying to pull them back in, like trying new things to really improve that list. And I'm not like an email marketing expert, but I think that I like to think about a newsletter or something like that in this context as a product. And so if you're looking at what's working, what's not, like, that open rate's not great. So something about the newsletter is not working. It can become overwhelming, right? There's like a lot of things to pay attention to. So maybe if the newsletter isn't performing that great, like, scrap it. And so you just remove that from the everyday tasks, because it can become so much work.
And I love what the exercise that we did where it was like around simplifying, and especially watching Jay like find that like 10 of his products were like not worth his time anymore, like realizing that like you said, murder your darlings. Like there are maybe things that weren't serving the customer. We do this in film as well. Murder your darlings. That's actually something that you have to cut out parts of your film that just aren't serving people at all. It's so hard, not gonna lie. But yeah, like some things you might just have to get rid of because they don't serve your customer. And how? Ooh, I guess I'm thinking like, what if I decided that patron wasn't like serving me, or it wasn't serving my audience in the way they needed, but it was also my money source?
I still think it's like, talk to them and figure out what's working and what's not. Like, whenever you're at a crossroads where you're like, I have no idea where the frick to like head, like which road to go down, the best thing you can do is some research, because that's going to help you understand further, like, and further refine and simplify. So, earlier when I was like, come up with 100 product ideas. Well, that's a lot of ideas, and you can only go one way, at least for, like, immediately. And so you have to do some research and refining to understand like how to get to the thing. So doing if something's not working well, having one-to-one conversations and understanding what's going on in their world, you'll immediately see gaps. Like it will just become obvious. Research helps things become obvious.
The one time I did a conversation with my audience, it was really great, but I got tons of feedback, like what you're saying right now, like tons of feedback about like what could make my community better. Do you think that people always know what they want? Because it's often something that I hear is that like people will give you feedback, but it doesn't always line up with what actually could solve their problem. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's like that Henry Ford quote, like if you asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. But you have to look at, what does it mean that they want a faster horse? Okay, they want to get somewhere faster. Okay, like they need some way to get from point A to point B a lot faster than a horse can take them. Okay, and then we get to the car, right? But if you ask them what they wanted, they couldn't invent like, oh, I would like a autom- automatic vehicle, please, like your manual vehicle, please. Like they wouldn't have been able to imagine that innovation on what exists today. And so you have to look at the underlying root. And I see this all the time, like, oh, I got feedback that I should add these 10 things, so I added these 10 things. Like, no. You want to get the feedback and understand, why do they need these 10 things? What is it that's missing? What is it that they're struggling with? Because you might have a completely different way to solve that, but the feedback helps tell a story and it helps you understand their problems. But it's not a one-for-one action plan.
To sum it up, we're trying to get people to understand the customer journey of, you know, people who are following the channel. What are the key problems they have, and what's the emotional journey that they've gone on? What are some tools and resources that people can look into to further understand all of this?
You can subscribe to my newsletter. That is a good way to learn more about this stuff. um, there's lots of articles too on my website that I have, but I think in general, like for terms to Google or things to look up, if you want to learn more about interviewing, the term is like customer interviews. Um, User interviews. Sorry, the term is user interviews. So like searching user interview methods, how to have one-to-one user interviews or customer interviews. There's lots of YouTube content that's not from me, but there's lots of YouTubers talking about UX research. UX, two letters, research. That's the really the foundations of this stuff. It comes from that. And really what I'm doing is taking, like, a journey map is an artifact of research in the UX world, where we do a ton of interviews, we do surveying, we do these research methods, and then we map the emotional journey, which shows us what product we should develop and how to develop it. And that is an early stage thing you do in product development. And what I'm doing is taking that and superimposing like the creator world of product development on top of that, to think about how can I serve my community longer and make sure that, because every moment that they fall down is a, like, you know, into the realm of like unhappy or uh, a bad emotion, that is a point where they might give up. And so it's our opportunity to serve them and help them not give up.
Do you have any other advice for like newbies starting this journey? Like they're trying to figure out, like, I make these videos, I make this content, I'm so lost here. How do I get to that space where I'm serving my customer? Is there any beginner advice?
Yeah, I would say look at the videos you have and see which ones have done really well from an engagement perspective, and try to reverse engineer why. Like what is it about this video that worked really well, and see if there's any themes. Like let's say you have 10 videos and 3 of them way outperform the others. Like what are the themes between those 3? And looking at how people engaged, what they're saying. I think that is a really good place to start, because there's a lot that the actual tool data tells us too, like in YouTube, like what's working about something and what's not. I mean, you do the same thing in your work, I'm sure, like helping people improve their channels. So yeah, just digging into like which videos are resonating, because you want to double down on that, and that's going to take you down a path that helps you start to understand them more. And the sooner you are commenting and getting to know the people that are subscribing, the better. So I would just really start there, because the best place to begin is to start having one-to-one conversations. I mean, I'm growing an Instagram from scratch right now. And even with when I had less than 50 followers, I was in people's DMs talking to them, right? So it's like, it doesn't matter how small it is. It's the same. And it's even better because you have more time to like get to know people one-to-one, and you never forget about those like first group of people that supported you.
And if community is a big important thing for people as well, that is one of the ways you help build community. Thank you so much for having a listen to this podcast. If you would like to connect with Becky, you can find her on Instagram at buildwbecky. And would you be willing to do me a small favor? I really appreciate just you guys listening to this podcast, and I love putting out these episodes. But if you were able to leave me a comment or answer one of the questions below in the comments section, that would help me so much to help this little channel reach more people and help more creators. So thank you. I will see you guys in 2 weeks.